What's up, Lions? I'm back. This is part 2 of the Ben Shapiro video. And this is going to be a quick video because if you watch the first one, please watch the first one if you didn't, because this is a continuation. I told you I would go through the rest of the video and see if he actually lists some rewards on why you should get married, because he was talking about a risk-reward ratio. And he said men today marrying women, given all the benefits that the law has for women to get married, all the incentive for them to get divorced, he's saying that it is worth the risk for men to get married. So even though the laws are completely lopsided against men, although women file for divorce between 70 to 80% of the time, although women get the kids most of the time, although women get child support 90% of the time, although women get alimony 97% of the time, although when a divorce occurs, it ruins the man economically, financially, he's saying it's still worth the risk. And I told you I was going to watch the rest of the video to see if he actually lists some of the rewards of getting married, and which makes it a risk worth taking. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you. He didn't list anything. I kid you not. So after listening to Pearl, after listening to the red pill points that he makes in the video, after listening to Andrew Tate and agreeing with everything they said, agreeing with the points they brought up, I listened to the rest of it to see what his rebuttals were, and he didn't have any. He literally didn't list any of the rewards of why men should take this risk. What he did mention is what men can do to lessen the chances of them getting divorced. But he doesn't list the rewards of why men should take the risk, which I don't understand. If you're trying to get someone to do something, you would think he would list the reasons why they should take the risk to do it. But he doesn't do that. He just lists ways that you can tip the odds in your favor on why you won't get a divorce. But he doesn't tell you any of the blissful things about doing it. So before I get in my head of myself, let me play it, and then we'll break it down, and at the end I'll come back with final thoughts. So this is going to pick up where we left off from the first video.
The way that Pearl and the rest of the Red Pill movement think the way they do is because of arguments like the one that a person named Destiny makes with Pearl in this particular clip.
Women out earning men have a hard time respecting the men they're with.
That's not true.
That's not true. I read into that data and it explained why. A lot of time the women reported that they were expected to be in charge of the household duties and still work a job. And they had to...
Oh, come on. What percent of modern women actually cook? I'm just saying this shit's automated nowadays. I mean, you have a washing machine, a dishwasher.
Yeah,
Sure, you can say, but even at that, but as much as it's automated, men still don't do it.
Yeah, still don't do it.
They still don't do it. That's the issue. Is that one of the big problems with households.
For divorce.
It absolutely is a reason.
Sure.
When you get older and you manage a household on your own, Pearl, you'll see how fucking annoying it is when you're working and then you come home and everything is fucked up and horrible and nobody's fucking cleaning anything. Yeah, that is a totally valid reason for divorce, of course.
Chores, to break up a home,
Pearl,
a family.
have you lived in a filthy home before? Like, it's so funny because like lifelong friends from like grade school, high school will dorm in college and then hate each other forever over like bad dorm roommates, and that's not even a relationship. So yeah, of course I think stuff like this is perfectly valid. I think splitting up duties in the household is like one of the most important parts of like a relationship, because it's where you're spending most of the time together. This is why I say, people get triggered when I say it, I don't think you're even dating until you live together, because until you live together you don't really know who the other person's like, and once you start living together and you see what the household duties are like, then you get a feel for what the relationship is.
So what Destiny is saying here is totally crazy, okay? The idea that you get divorced, let's say you have kids, you get divorced because you can't...
I agree with Ben there. I do think the guy with the blue hair, Destiny, is crazy. Him I'm a little bit more familiar with. I've seen him speak on different people's platforms, and I think that guy is just... I don't think he's stupid. He's definitely not stupid. But his views and how he sees things is just bizarre. He's just... I don't have a lot of patience for or respect for men that that just, it seems like he panders to women a lot. And I just don't respect men that do that. That's a problem that we have today. This is the reason why we're in the situation that we're in, because we have been fed decades of men pandering to women, and we've been fed ridiculous information. And the media has done it. They just have put men in position of influence, and they use them to market to men information that has just been disastrous to the development of men. And they've used men like Destiny and different others, more mainstream celebrity figures. This is the reason why someone like Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson or even Pearl is so polarizing, because they're saying things that you don't see on mainstream media. They're actually saying things that goes against the message that's being propagated out to us. And I feel like he's a part of that problem. And I'm not even saying I shouldn't say he's a part of the problem. I don't think he's a problem. I don't think he's big enough to be a problem. But I'm just saying we have a lot of men who are a problem just based off of their fan base and their influence and their reach, who just say ridiculous stuff. And it's really a training mechanism, and it's a way to transform your mind and to get you thinking a certain type of way. For lack of a better word, it's brainwashing, basically. Every country does it. I want to make that very clear. It's not just the United States. Every country markets to their citizens messages which is based on how they want their citizens to think, how they want their citizens to behave. That is what television does, news outlets do, magazines, social media, even the education system. Our education system teaches us in a way and in a manner of how they want us to think, how they want us to function into this society. Education should just be about, in my opinion, education should just be about the fundamental things that a person needs in order to be a functioning adult in society. So mathematics, English, reading comprehension, English, history, economics, finances. I think these are the most pertinent areas where we need to be educated. But all this other stuff that they're mixing in there, especially when you get to the collegiate level, is really it's really a building that produces people who think a certain way. There's a lot of people that are very different before they went to college versus when they come out of college, because they go to college and they get indoctrinated with these different ideals. So, like I said, every country does it, but our educational system, our media outlets, social media, they're all indoctrination tools. And they're put there to have the citizens think and behave a particular way. Anyway, let's get back to this video.
Can't split up who handles the dishwasher is nuts. And comparing marriage to roommates, college roommates, yes, because you don't expect to be roommates with your roommate for the rest of your life and have children with them, generally speaking.
Yeah, and the fact that the guy in the blue-haired Destiny thinks that being sloppy and messy at home is a reason to get divorced is just insane. And it just goes to show you why divorce is so high. Because he's a man. So if him being a man, he thinks that this is a valid reason, imagine the reasons that women believe are valid in their head. This is why I said he's ridiculous.
Okay. A marriage is not supposed to be a contractual arrangement that is purely about who shares household duties. It's supposed to be about building a household. So it's that attitude toward divorce that is making the Red Pill crew basically say, okay, well, if that's your version of marriage, then I'm not in. I agree. If that were my version of marriage, I would not be in. The point that I'm making is that shouldn't be anybody's version of marriage. Just like the current version of divorce shouldn't be anybody's version of divorce. And I want to give you some stats that demonstrate that not all marriages are created equal. Not all predicates for marriage are the same. So Brad Wilcox, who is a social science scholar on all of this, he has a book called Get Married, and it's all about marriage and divorce. And here are some of the facts in that book that are well substantiated by the data. The number one factor in predicting a high-quality marriage is perceived partner commitment. If you believe that your partner is deeply committed to the marriage, you will be deeply committed to the marriage, which is one of the reasons why it really matters how you date. It really, really matters how you date. So I agree that in a context where you're picking up a girl at a bar and then you live together and then you get married to her, that's a very risky situation. You put yourself in a situation that is very risky. But that is not how I've ever recommended dating. That is not ever how I've recommended getting married. It is all part of a holistic view of how male-female relationships work. If you just take marriage as an institution and you just throw it out there and however you date is supposed to be equivalent, that of course is not true. Women who attend church are 50% less likely to divorce. For example, so when you heard Pearl earlier talk about, for example, I've seen Christian women do it, I've seen Muslim women, yes, but the question is likelihood. You can always find somebody in any group who does X, Y, or Z. The question is, how often does that happen? How do you mitigate your risk? As far as the stat that 50% of marriages end in divorce, just about 40% right now of first marriages end in divorce, which is way, way too high. It's also down significantly since the 1980s. But again, it's not equivalent between groups. College-educated parents' risk of divorce has fallen by about 25% since the 1970s. And here's a good stat. Almost 90% of their children for college-educated parents are being raised in married, largely intact families today. So it turns out that there is actually a formula to a successful marriage. It tends to be conservative, religious, highly educated. Those would be like the biggest things that are going to affect whether you end up staying married or whether you end up divorced.
Okay. He said the three things that you can do to highly tip the odds in your favor that you won't get a divorce is to be conservative, to be religious, and to be highly educated. Let's start with highly educated. Most people are not highly educated. Most people don't have the faculties to be highly educated. What I mean by that is we all have different skill sets, and there is no damn reason why someone who's an electrician, someone who's an auto mechanic, someone who's a plumber, someone who's a train conductor, someone who drives buses, someone who's a trucker, someone who's a plumber, someone who's HVAC, someone who's a book editor, someone who's an accountant. Like, there's no reason why these type of individuals would be highly educated. Their skill set and what they do for a living doesn't require them to be highly educated. So I really don't. So just based off of that one thing alone, based off of what he's saying, would make anyone susceptible or more susceptible to a divorce. Everyone can't be highly educated. Everyone doesn't have the same abilities, the same skill set, the same faculties, or the same economic abilities to be highly educated. And I'm assuming when he says highly educated, he's talking about beyond a bachelor's degree. Because being educated to me is an associate's and bachelor's. Being highly educated is like a master's and up to the PhD level, doctorate. So I don't know what he means by highly educated, and he doesn't go into detail. The other thing is religious. I have an issue with this term because most people that get divorced, when you ask them what is their religion, a lot of times they'll give it to you. They'll say Christian, whatever, Baptist, Mormon, whatever. But most people who say that aren't actually following the tenets of their religion. They just say I'm a Christian. They just say I'm a Lutheran. They just say I'm a Catholic. But when you look at their life, they never follow any of the tenets of it. So when he says be religious, I'm going to give him a little grace here and say that he means someone who actually follows the tenets of their religion. Now, I have said in past videos, and I'll continue to say it, if you're a man in the West and you're looking to get married, marry a woman who is a devout Catholic, because they don't believe in divorce under any circumstances. Devout Catholic, or a woman who's a Christian who actually follows the tenets of the Bible. I know everyone out there is not Christian. I know someone can be a different religion, Islam, whatever the case may be. I'm saying Christian because that's what I am. So I don't care about the other faiths that people have, respectfully. So I'll give him grace on that. He's saying someone who has a religion and they are actually following the tenets of it. I would agree that will tip the odds in your favor of more of not getting divorced. Then he says conservative. Again, because he brought up something about the left earlier. So when he says conservative, I'm assuming he's saying Republican. Again, I don't agree because I'm not political. The left and the right has put us in this position. They have both been in position to make laws and write bills in this country, and neither side has addressed these laws that have been so unfair to men in this country for decades. They refuse to address it. They refuse to touch it, no matter who's in office, who's in charge of Congress, who's in charge of the Senate. It does not matter. Both sides have turned a blind eye to that. So the only thing out of the three things he listed, conservative, religious, and highly educated, that I would agree with is the religious. I think when you follow the tenets of your religion, and for this example, I'm going to use Christian because that's the one I observe. If you follow the tenets of Christianity, it will, by following the tenets, make you conservative. If you have to put that person in a group, it would be conservative because the tenets of Christianity would fall into that bracket. Him being a Christian, I'm assuming he's a Christian, but he did say he was Jewish, so I don't know. But the tenets that he follows will put him in a conservative group. And anyone who's following the tenets of the Bible, I think would do that. And now I'm not saying there's not Christians out there who don't identify as conservatives. I'm just saying if you follow the tenets of the Bible from a political standpoint, this is where it would put you. The highly educated, I don't buy that at all because most people are not highly educated. So based off of his logic, most people who get married, there's a great chance of them getting divorced, which I agree with. I agree with that, but I just don't agree with the reasons why he's saying it. He's saying it's because they're not highly educated, it could increase the chances of them getting divorced. Now, they ain't the reason. The reason is the laws are lopsided. And that women have no incentive to actually stay in a marriage. There's no consequence for her. That's why we have what we have going on. It has nothing to do with the education. And I don't agree with that point. So let's get back to the video. There's only a few minutes left, and then we'll close this out.
By the way, another factor that ends up determining whether you stay married or end up divorced is, again, about the nature of the marriage. Do you have kids? Marriages with kids divorce far less often than marriages without kids. In fact, the divorce rate for couples with kids is about 40%.
He said marriage with kids divorce less often than marriage without kids. I don't know the numbers on that. He's looking at his laptop, so he has some kind of stats in front of him. But I can tell you, all the men that's complaining about divorce, 90% of them had children. The men who weren't married and who can just walk away and start over again, these aren't the ones that's complaining about being screwed over by the legal system. It's the men who have kids that are doing the complaining. They're the ones who are losing access to their children the way they had in the marriage. They're the ones who's losing half their stuff. They're the ones that's on child support. They're the ones that's paying the alimony. So he's reciting some stat that if you have children, you are less likely to get divorced. But whatever stat he's reciting has no bearing on what we're seeing, what's actually playing out. The men that are being impacted are the men that do have children that get divorced. These are the ones that are being greatly impacted. And regardless of what stat he's looking at, we have to look at reality. It's too high. Whatever the number is, It's too high, and it's going to stay high until the laws is changed.
Lower than the divorce rate for couples without kids, which makes sense because you have less investment. Once you have kids, then actually it damages another party for you to get divorced over the dishwasher.
He's right about that. It damages the other party to get divorced over a dishwasher when the kids are involved. But it only damages one, the men, which is why Pearl, Andrew Tate, and the Red Pill is saying it's risky for men to get married, because that's who it's damaging. So he just admitted it. For them to get divorced over something stupid when there's kids involved, it damages one party. Yes, the party is the men. This is why they're not doing it. So again, he's trying to make his point, but he's making Pearl, Andrew Tate's, and the Red Pill community's point that to get divorced over something menial affects one party, yes, which is the men. And actually, I'm going to add another party that it affects, which is the children. The only person that it doesn't impact is the wife. It impacts the father, it impacts the kids.
And then somebody else pays for your crimes at that point. 77% of college-educated conservative parents are still in their first marriage. So are 70% of moderates and 68% of liberals. And again, the number of newly divorced people per 1,000 married Americans has declined pretty markedly since the 80s. It was 22.6 in 1980. It is 13.6 today in 2021. As far as the notion that it's like damaging financially for men to get married, no, it's damaging for men to get divorced. It's not damaging for men to get married. Married men in their 30s earn about $95,000. If they're cohabiting, they earn about $68,000. If they're single, they earn about $42,000. The average marriage premium in household assets is more than $290,000 for a stably married man. So, again, I think what people are actually arguing about over here, to be fair to the Red Pill crew, I think what they're actually arguing about is divorce. And so the question is, are you more likely to stay married?
All right, you got to be kidding me here. He said what I actually think the Red Pill is arguing about is divorce. Yes, that's what they're arguing about. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? In order for a divorce to take place, a marriage has to take place first. So when they're speaking out against marriage, it's because they're looking at the end result of that commitment, of that decision, which is divorce. And then they're looking at the numbers. That if you make the decision to get married, under these conditions, under these laws, these unequal, unfair laws to men, and the incentive for women to break up their marriages in their homes, this is what the divorce will cost you. This is what the result of making a decision to get married will cost you. He's being disingenuous. He's being disingenuous here, which I don't like that. I don't like that. He's acting like he doesn't know what they're talking about. What he does. Trust me, he does. He's not stupid.
Or are you more likely to end up in a divorce situation? And that is a fair question depending on the process that you use for dating. In the cultural milieu in which you live. In the community where I live, an Orthodox Jewish community, not a lot of divorce. Like very, very low divorce rates. Why? Well, because everyone is religiously committed. Because everybody goes into marriage believing it is a sacred bond that actually matters. Because people don't date for sex. People actually date looking forward to the day when they will have kids together. Because every family in my neighborhood has 4+ kids. Those are the preconditions. But if the idea here is that your basic...
All right. So now he's taking it out of a general context into a more specific context. He's talking about North something Jewish community. This is the same argument if you take a look at the Amish community. So now he's taking it from a general sense into a specific institution and to a specific group. Now he's getting anecdotal with it. And on that point, I would agree. If you look at the Amish community, there's no high chance of divorce. I don't even know if they get divorced in the Amish community. I don't think you're allowed to. I think if you want to get divorced in the Amish community, you have to leave the Amish community in order to do that, I believe. You can double check me on that. So I do believe that in little subset, subcultures, sub-communities, subgroups, divorce can be extremely small. And he's talking about the Jewish group that he's in. And you have groups like I said, Amish. You may have some Mormon, these close-knit Mormon communities. So I do believe that exists. But again, most people are not Amish. Most people are not a part of that Jewish subgroup that he's talking about. Most people are not part of a close-knit Mormon community. So again, when the red pill and men speak in general on this topic, they're talking about the majority. They're talking about in general. He's changing the subject. He's changing the topic. He's doing a. I don't know if you've ever been to New York or any other big city, and they have different guys. They have different vendors set up doing different things. There used to be a trick they used to do in Central Park and in other cities, but it would be a card trick where they would have 3 cards and then they would move it around, and if you can guess which card went where, you would win money. This is what he's doing. He's moving the cards around. I think everyone knows that there's specific groups and subgroups that have a low divorce rate. I don't think anyone will argue that. Yes, Amish have a low divorce rate. I guess the Jewish community that he's a part of has a low divorce rate. I would not argue with him on that. But that is not the majority. We can't talk about these little anecdote or subgroups. We have to talk about the majority. The majority of men and women do not belong to these groups. And if you go back decades ago, 100 years ago, 150 years ago, in general, divorce was not happening. So he's still not addressing the problem. He's saying if you're a part of these little subgroups, then there's a great chance that it won't happen to you, which I agree. But if you go back 100 years ago, in general, divorce was not happening in general. So not only was it not happening 100 years ago in these little small groups, it was also not happening in general. So now he's saying in order to have a marriage intact, you have to become a part of one of these subgroups. But that's just not reality. That's just not realistic. Most people do not fit in these subgroups. So again, this particular solution that he's suggesting is ridiculous. And he's saying find a woman who has your same core values, who is committed as you. And again, this is disingenuous. A lot of men believe that they have that prior to going into the marriage, only to find out later on when they end up divorced that they never had that. So the type of woman that he's talking about that's going to commit, be committed, and not get divorced is not a woman today that is readily available. It's almost as if he's talking about a unicorn, some mythical woman that's out there that you can find. Many men have tried to find this woman. Many men have thought they found that woman until they ended up divorced.
Binary is, are you going to be married or divorced? Divorced is typically worse than never married, and married is way better than both divorced and never married. And so, yeah, it's a risk. But is it a coin flip? I don't think it's a coin flip. I think it is a decision that you have to make as to what kind of person you wish to date, how you wish to date that person, what kind of relationship you wish to build, and how seriously you take that commitment in the first place. Do the laws need to change? Absolutely, and they need to change. They're garbage. I totally agree with that. It is easy for men to be victimized under these circumstances. It's so easy that you should not enter the risk. Well, let's look at some of the upsides and the downsides. Here's a chart from Brad about opioid overdose deaths by gender, educational attainment, and marital status. And what you see is that among men, if you are single, never married, what you see is that the opioid overdoses per 100,000 age 25 plus, it's like 25 for single, never married men. It is even higher for divorced men, and it is extremely low for married men. Really, really low for married men. And again, are you going to be one of the people who gets divorced or not? One of the things you can know going in is you will never get divorced, and then you have to make sure that you marry a woman who will never get divorced. And we can't pretend that divorce sort of falls on you like rain from the heavens. That's not right. The person this is why.
So I guess his climax point is that if you don't get married, you have a higher chance of dying of opioid overdose. I mean, this is beyond a reach. This is just ridiculous. I can't believe he even left that in his video. If you don't get married, you have a higher chance as a man of dying of an opioid overdose. In order for that to even happen, you have to be taking opioids. I mean, is he just suggesting that men that don't get married take opioids and then die of an overdose? I mean, I think that's a ridiculous statement to make. But you watched it. He said it. You seen the chart. It sounds like that's what he's saying. And that's a reason to get married, so you don't die from an opioid overdose. So this is the end of the video, guys. I stopped it at 18:29. There's only 20 seconds left. There's no need to play that 20 seconds. So the breakdown, the only reward that he said for getting married and taking that risk, why men should take that risk, is he said men that get married tend to earn more money over time. I think he was saying they tend to earn more, and men that get married don't die from opioid overdoses. So those are the two reasons, the two rewards of being married. That's a reward. You make more money and you won't die of an opioid overdose. That is absolute nonsense. He heard all the points that Andrew Tate said, that Red Pill people said, that Pearl said, and there was a whole bunch of different reasons. And he only came up with two rewards on why they should disregard all these danger points. One, if they get married, they'll make more money. And two, they won't die of an opioid overdose. The chances are in their favor they won't die of an opioid overdose. So you can't make this stuff up, man. Again, I don't know Ben Shapiro that well. He's a married man, so obviously he's going to be leaning towards marriage and why he's for it, because he's in it. That's what people do. Most people anyway. When they're in a situation, they will fight for that situation because they're in that situation. It creates a bias. So I'm not faulting him for that, but I'm faulting him for the ridiculous points he made in this video. I mean, they were just beyond nonsense. And I didn't even go to his comments to see what people said. I should go there to see what people in the comment section are saying, to see if they roasted him or not. So anyway, that's it, Lions. I hope you enjoyed this video. Look, at the end of the day, it's your life, and you have to make the decisions that you feel are best for your life. But make sure the decisions you make them with your eyes wide open, so you can be heavily informed and aware going in. Because a lot of men, we're privy to a lot of information today that we didn't have before, and a lot of men went in blind, and they ended up divorced. They lost their kids, their stuff, and they're really perplexed on how it happened. But with this space, we're able to show men how it happens, and it starts with the destruction of marriages and families, and that starts with the legal system. Once the laws change, everything else changed. So guys, I'll talk to you soon. See you next time.